Good evening, my name is Jim Conlan and welcome to this special edition of the RCB Radio Sport Show, West Clare, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb.ie. Tonight's show is being streamed on our YouTube channel, RCB Sport. I'm delighted this evening to welcome an all-star football cast, including the All-Ireland winning managers of John O'Mahony and Joe Kernan, along with Meath legendary footballer Stephen Bray, as we debate the top 10 Footballer of the Year winners, the Texaco Footballer of the Year winners, and the GPA Footballer of the Year winners from 2000 to 2019. And just before we come to Joe Kernan to start the ball rolling, I'm just going to call out the winners starting from 2000 all the way down to 2019 for our listeners. So in 2000, Seamus Moynihan from Kerry won the prestigious award. In 2001, the Texaco winner of the year Footballer of the Year was Patrick Joyce from Galway. But the GPA Footballer of the Year was Declan Meehan from Galway. In 2002, the winner was Kieran McGeeney from Armagh. In 2003, the Texaco Footballer of the Year was Peter Canavan from Tyrone, but the GPA Footballer of the Year was Stephen McDonald from Armagh. In 2004, the Texaco Footballer of the Year was Colin Cooper from Kerry, but the GPA Footballer of the Year was Matty Ford from Wexford. In 2005, the Footballer of the Year was Stephen O'Neill from Tyrone. 2006, the Footballer of the Year was Kieran Donaghy from Kerry. 2007, the Footballer of the Year was Marco Shea from Kerry. 2008, Sean Kavanagh from Tyrone was Footballer of the Year. And 2009, the Texaco Footballer of the Year and the All-Star Footballer of the Year was Tomas O'Shea from Kerry, but the GPA Footballer of the Year was Paul Galvin from Kerry. 2010, the Footballer of the Year was Bernard Brogan from Dublin. 2011 was his older brother, Alan Brogan from Dublin. 2012, Carl Lacey from Donegal got the prestigious award. In 2013, the winner was Michael Dara McCauley from Dublin. 2014, the winner was James O'Donoghue from Kerry. 2015, the winner was Jack McCaffrey from Dublin. 2016, the winner was Lee Keegan from Mayo. 2017, our winner was Andy Moran from Mayo. 2018, the winner was Brian Fenton from Dublin. And lastly, the 2019 winner was Stephen Cluxton from Dublin. So if I can go to All-Ireland winning manager of Armagh, Joe Kernan first. And Joe, if I could have from reverse order your number 10 down to your number 5.
Well, you're after mentioning 24 players there, and you know they're all rightly winners and great players. So the task hasn't been easy. But in 10th position, I picked Patrick Joyce.
Patrick Joyce.
9th position, Tomas O'Shea. In 8th position, Brian Fenton.
8th position, Brian Fenton.
In 7th, Sean Kavanagh from Tyrone.
7th, Sean Kavanagh.
6th, Alan Brogan. That's my first 5.
6th, Alan Brogan. And if I can come on to you, John Mahoney, so if I can get down in reverse order from 10 down to as far as number 5.
Right, well, I suppose I tried to look on this as scientifically as I could. I think in those, 20 years, I think Dublin and Kerry have both won 7 All-Irelands each, as far as I'm aware. And I think the other team, actually, with being in most All-Irelands, was Mayo. So, I think that all of the winners that I've picked are winning All-Ireland players. Apart from number 10, I felt that, maybe I'm a bit biased here, but I felt that Mayo deserved some shout, and either Keegan or Moran might get in at number 10 there. And I literally could. There'd be an argument. I mean, Keegan was, I suppose, you look, why were Mayo so close to winning in the late noughties in particular? And I would say that, and you know, the Keegan was one of the reasons, and Moran was the other. So Keegan was probably one of the best half backs in the country for a good number of years. He got some crucial goals, all of that. Moran, I think what Moran did, he reinvented himself after his crucial knee injury, and you know, did the basic things of being the target man, his movement and his layoffs and so on. So I put, look at toss of a coin, really, either of them. Number 9 was Colin Cooper, because look, he was poetry in motion as far as I'd be concerned. He came on the scene in the early noughties. He had they had easy wins against Mayo in 06, 04 and 06. He had an injury, like that's probably he missed, I think, 2014 because of injury. So I suppose maybe that's why he'd be so far down the line, because he was an artist. He was the one, when he did get that injury, whatever year it was, 2014. I think every follower of GA right throughout the country were sad that he wasn't there, because he was worth the admission price alone. And number 8, I agree with Joe on this one, Brian Fenton. I mean, never lost a championship game. Rolls Royce of midfielders, scores, the leader. I mean, he has all the winning qualities. You're looking for number 7 as well. Yeah. Sean Kavanagh. I had at number 7 because he was a ball winner. He was skillful. He was ruthless, as he showed the day that he took down Conor McManus, even though that wouldn't be, I suppose, he got a lot of criticism, especially from Mr. Brawley on that particular day. But he I suppose, you could argue that he was the provider, if you like, for the forward line, and for Canavan and Stephen O'Neill and these guys. He was absolutely crucial. Number 6, do you want number 6? Is Bernard Brogan. Scorer in chief, turn games on their head. I mean, the 2013 All Ireland final, I remember in particular, where Mayo were having the best of it in the first half. I think they were up to 4 points ahead, and Dublin were struggling. And the man that turned that game on its head was Bernard Brogan, with the goal halfway through the first half. When he if he caught the ball or went to catch it, he would have been poleaxed, I'd say, by either the keeper or the full back. But he flicked the ball into an empty net, and the goalkeeper made a mistake of either he should have stayed on his line or he should have come to get it, and he didn't. And then Brogan went on to get the winning goal in the second half. So I think he has been invaluable to Dublin down the years. So they'd be my first 5. So there.
And I suppose we'll come on to you now. We'll come on to you now, Stephen Bray, in relation to 10 down to number 5 in reverse order. Who makes your list?
Yeah, thankfully I have a few of the lads that were mentioned already as well by John and Joe. So, yeah, I've kind of went, I suppose we're trying to put some logic to it. So, yeah, kind of went with longevity of performance and I suppose how key they were to their team. I suppose these are all individual awards, but they're all part of great teams, and I suppose the dominant teams through the 2000s and now in the last decade has been Kerry, Dublin, and probably Tyrone. So kind of went along those lines. So from 10 to 6. I suppose a little bit of an outsider, but I went for Carl Lacey here. I suppose Donegal, through the Jim McGuinness era, have probably revolutionised football in their way, and certainly brought a new template to playing football. And he certainly was a key player for Donegal. At number 9, I have Jack McCaffrey. I suppose, look, some would argue, has he ever been tested defensively? But going forward, he's just got lightning speed and probably a nightmare for any forward to mark. At number 8, again, I suppose I've went for Kieran McGeeney. I suppose again a pivotal figure for Armagh when they won an All Ireland, and I suppose throughout his career with Armagh had been a real key in their armour. So number 7, Tomás O'Shea. Just a player who I really admired over the years, and brilliant going forward, but really teak tough defender as well. Won lots of breaking ball for his team as well. So number 6, I suppose I had to start putting a few Tyrone lads in. So Peter Canavan at number 6. Captained first Tyrone All Ireland winning team, and you know, I suppose an inspirational player for Tyrone, probably in the early part of that mid-90 decade to the mid-2000s as well. So they're my top 5, or sorry, 10 to 5, should I say.
And I suppose, Joe, if I can come to you first in relation to, you had many great battles with Kerry down through the years in your time as Armagh manager, and one guy you had to stop sauntering up the field was the flamboyant wing back Tommaso Shea, who was deadly carrying the ball, just as good of his defensive abilities, Tomas's abilities to get up the field and kick a point or two, a formidable player. And probably in the early 2000s, he was the nearest thing that we had to in terms of Jack McCaffrey. He was the original flying half-back, Tommaso Shea. And he was certainly a guy, Joe Kernan, I suppose, that you would have definitely in your game plans, he was a guy that you'd have to stop.
Yeah, without a doubt. When you're looking at all these players, you're looking at what they bring to the team, and you know, they all bring something different, from forwards to defenders to goalkeepers, whatever the case might be. But he was Mr. Dependable, not only in the high performance he gave every day. He was a leader. He got scores if they needed them, but he also was a great defender, and he was as tough as they come. So he had that wee bit of everything: class, reassurance. He led his teammates, and he just got on with the job day in, day out. And the longevity of his career and all he won, I think it was 5 All-Stars, 9 Munsters, 5 All-Irelands, 3 National Leagues, and he also come back and then I think he won an All-Ireland club with in his own club. So it's that.
Yeah, and I suppose, Joe, in relation to another player I'm going to mention now, the older brother of the Brogans, Alan Brogan. I suppose in his pomp, in terms of centre-forward play, he was the ultimate sort of link man in his ability to pick out that incisive pass, and his ability to provide that. While Bernard was the sort of finisher, Alan was the sort of creator for many of the inside Dublin forwards. He was a guy that could easily step inside his man and pump it over from 30 or 40 yards, but he also could provide that killer pass when Dublin were so evident and so efficient. And he was the key marquee forward when Jim Gavin took over. Alan Brogan was the man. I suppose starting off for Jim Gavin, I suppose Alan Brogan was probably his main guy in attack.
Without a doubt, if you go back 2 or 3 years before this is what Dublin were missing. They always had good players, but they hadn't leaders, they hadn't influential players, they hadn't boys that could open doors, and they hadn't somebody who could get scores regularly. Like 3 All-Stars, 3 National Leagues, 11 Leinster titles, and 3 All-Irelands. That's what this man brought to the table. But more important, he brought the team to another level, which they weren't able to reach up to then. But when he settled in, got a regular place, and the rest of the players knew exactly what he could do, he opened doors for other players as well as getting vital scores himself. And his movement all over the field, have time the ball into where this last 10 years.
And I suppose if I can move on to you, John, in relation to your selection, and I'm just going to talk about, first of all, you mentioned one of the Mayo contingent there at number 10, Andy Moore, and I suppose I have memories of Andy myself. When I was in Sligo, I played freshers football with Sligo IT, and Andy was in the Signalson the year above me, and you could even see his movement to training when the freshers would play with the Signalson. But Andy Moore, in terms of movement as a forward, he sort of revolutionised the inside forward, because a corner forward's role in relation to in movement, Andy just played corner, he played full, he started anywhere within 20 yards out where the space was. Andy knew where to make those runs, where to find those space. And even though for a guy not blessed with fantastic pace, Andy Moore was always, he had the step in the mind, he was always out in front of his man the whole time.
He was. I mean, he was a tremendous player. And if you remember back as far as 2006, I think when Dublin led Mayo by 7 or 8 points in the semi-final, Andy was put on. He was only coming in as a sub on that occasion. He was a young player, and I gather he said to Mickey Morden, going on, he says, I'm going to get a goal. And he got a goal, and Mayo won that match. But I think you mentioned lack of pace there. He did, and particularly after his cruciate. But in fact, I think that benefited him. Now, I know Andy had trained him at schools and at club level as a young player. He's my own club. But he reinvented himself in the sense that he used the basic skills that he had of very good kick passer, very good ball winner, and a very good team player. And he, as I said, he did the very basic. So the best years of his career were the last 3 or 4 years of his career after his cruciate injury, which is amazing, because speed in Gaelic football is not about winning an Olympic 100-metre sprint. It's about speed of thought, first of all, to know when to, if you think faster than the guy you're marking, no matter what pace you have, you'll be out ahead of him for the ball. And that's what Andy did to perfection.
Yeah, and I suppose, John, another guy I'm going to bring you on now to discuss, I suppose, the real juggernaut of Tyrone football. He led the line for so many years in terms of whether it was a midfield or centre forward. He was the sort of original sort of a powerhouse midfielder, reminiscent of Anthony Tohill in his pomp for Derry. Was Sean Kavanagh in terms of his fielding ability, in terms of his point kicking from distance, but his ability to break the line as well, and off either foot, well, Sean Kavanagh could score from any distance, no matter the angle.
He did, yeah. I mean, he was a tremendous player from that point of view. He could play centre forward, full forward, midfield. As you said, he broke the tackles, broke the line, and when the game was at its height, when, games come to their crunch in the second half, no matter who's playing, or, the big games, and he was the man that you always saw at those stages of the game to provide the ammunition for the inside forwards, in fairness, which they had a huge amount. And then you had Dooher out on his right, going back to full back line and so on. So I think that he was absolutely vital to that team. You might say, what players, like if they didn't have Sean Kavanagh, Tyrone wouldn't have 3 All-Irelands as it is, as they have as a result of it. And I suppose every team needs so many ball winners, so many finishers, and I think the balance was just about right in that Tyrone team right through it. They had all aspects covered, really.
And I suppose, John, in terms of you as a manager, you've often seen times where teams are sort of reblooding and regenerating themselves. But Sean Kavanagh went through probably 2, maybe 3 transformations of a Tyrone team throughout his career. And he still had to be the linchpin in that team. When one Tyrone era ended, he stayed on for the second era, when that era, and then he sort of brought the third generation on before he departed again. So how important is that in terms of a player that can stay on for that time and sort of regenerate and rebuild not only one side, maybe 2 sides around him?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously he was, as you say there, he was the link between all the 3 teams, and he would have commanded huge respect in the Tyrone dressing room. I've no doubt about that. And especially even at a young age, when Cormac McAnallen unfortunately died tragically, he would have been another player of that Kavanagh type, mold. And once he sadly passed away, I think Kavanagh was of the younger generation that came back. I remember back in minor and under 21 days, he came right through there, and he was the link, and he almost was involved in maybe a 4th team that were pushing close when they got to the All-Ireland a couple of years ago, but obviously had retired at that stage. So no, he has been an outstanding player. But then all of these lads that you've mentioned, really, but Kavanagh, they have, I suppose, a different dynamic in the sense of Kavanagh was the ultimate ball winner, where fella like Colin Cooper is more, if you like, has to be provided maybe with the ball, even though he could fight his corner as well. But Kavanagh was somebody who will always be remembered in Tyrone.
And I suppose, Stephen, if I can bring you on to you now, Stephen, and in terms, you mentioned Carl Lacey, the All-Ireland winner from Donegal, the year Donegal broke through under Jim McGuinness, and I suppose Carl Lacey's role in terms of the half-back, he was the sort of guy that held up the middle, but he was so formidable bringing the ball out of defence, carrying the ball up the field in terms of Jim McGuinness' system. And Carl was the guy who probably started an awful lot of the moves for Donegal, spearheaded them out of the defence, the sort of mass breaks up the field. But also Carl Lacey was well able to finish, a guy that you felt that could play anywhere in the football field, from corner forward all the way back to corner back. Is that a fair assessment about Carl Lacey's footballing ability, Stephen?
Yeah, no, definitely 100%. Yeah, very comfortable player on the ball. I think just exactly what Jim McGuinness required in his kind of game plan. Someone that made sure that he made good decisions on the ball and didn't give it away cheaply. And yeah, he was, a good defender, a good tackler, and like you said, he popped up with some crucial scores for Donegal. Yeah, through those kind of good years under Jim McGuinness. So yeah, I think, look, there was probably a good few Donegal players that were key to Donegal during the Jim McGuinness era, but I suppose I definitely had to include one Donegal player, and Carl Lacey, I suppose, is someone that would be very admired, and had lots of natural skill as well on the ball. So as a defender, that
yeah, and I suppose, Stephen, in terms of Carl's stature and his physique, he wasn't the biggest man in terms of that Donegal team. Maybe you look at some of the players that Donegal had in McGee's and Frankie Midlane, big physical guys, but Carl was very sort of fleet-footed in terms of his ability to step off either foot and his ability to kick off either foot, but his ability to go through the gears at pace, acceleration. It's probably reminiscent of Ryan McHugh today for Donegal. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, exactly. You just took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, very similar to Ryan McHugh. Yeah, exact same mold. Certainly not big physical player, but very cute and knew how to evade tackles and knew how to he was very athletic, very comfortable on the ball, and very good going forward, and pacey. So yeah, what he might have lacked in size and power, maybe he certainly made up for it in lots of other ways.
And I suppose if I could mention now another guy, I suppose he was Joe's captain when Joe won the All-Ireland for Armagh, and Kieran McGeaney at centre-back. And I suppose Kieran was the formidable brick house of a centre-back. If you look at in terms of your hurlings, your Kim McGraths, your Shawnee McMahons, Kieran McGeaney was the equivalent in football. He was the ultimate sort of a stopper, very ferocious in the tackle, a very good guy to rip out the ball and really knock the life out of forwards and really provide the counter-attack. When you look at turnovers when teams were attacking, Kieran McGeaney was probably the heart over. When you took the ball into contact against Kieran McGeaney, 9 times out of 10 you weren't coming back out with the ball.
Yeah, no, definitely. I suppose I don't know Kieran that well, but I suppose the rumours were that he was, so dedicated to his sport, and they're people that I would really admire, and someone that really dedicates themselves and kind of gets the most out of themselves. And I think that's what Kieran McGeaney was like. He got the absolute maximum out of himself. And as regards toughness, I don't think there's too many players that, when it came to the Aussie rules or the international rules, the Aussies were backing down when he confronted a few of them. So I think that speaks volumes for Kieran McGeaney. So
Yeah, and I suppose in today's modern game, Stephen, we see an awful lot of players, transitional sort of players in terms of the half-backs, in terms of players moving up the field. But in terms of a rigorous sort of a defensive sort of structure in today's modern game, a guy that when runners are coming at him at pace, trying to break the tackle, trying to break inside the 40. It's very hard for defenders these days to hold up that sort of movement. But Kieran, in terms of Armagh, in terms of that defence, he was able to halt the attackers' progress many times in terms of just so the bodies could get around and cover and support. And in terms of that defending, that ability on your back foot when a guy is coming at pace, trying to break the line, it's an art in itself in terms of defending, Steve.
Yeah, I suppose, look, the game has definitely moved on, and it's a different game than, I suppose, when Kieran McGeeney was really dominant. But I'm sure if he was still around now, he'd adapt and make sure that he was the best that he could be in the way the game is played now. I suppose, look, he's a tough defender, and his tackling and his physicality was what really stood to him. I don't think too many got around him.
And I suppose now, lads, we'll move on to the second part, and we'll come back around now to you, Joe, again. And if I can get in reverse order of your number 5 to your number 2, please.
Okay. Yeah, well, I start off this time. Number 5 is Bernard Brogan, a man with an awful amount of medals, 4 All-Stars, 13 Leinsters, 5 National Leagues, and 7 All-Irelands. You know, what more can somebody give? But as John rightly said earlier on, his sharpness and cuteness inbound the full forward line, the scores he got all the time, made him a great player. Number 4 would be Peter Canavan, you know, the Peter Pan of Gaelic football. 6 All-Stars, 2 All-Irelands, 2 National Leagues, 5 Ulsters, and also then helped out his club win a couple of Ulsters and county titles as well. Great player. Number 3, Kieran McGeeney, the most determined man I ever met, a born leader, the most dedicated man. You know, he always felt there was more in the tank. Surprisingly, now I come to number 2, and I have Lee Keegan in here. This was my dream player, the man who could, you know, he was an attacking halfback first, but then he turned out to be the best man marker in Ireland. Nobody else could mark as tight as he could. You mightn't have liked it, but every team wanted somebody like Lee Keegan. And what did he do after marking the best player in the opposition? He'd go up and score a goal. So Lee Keegan was one of my dream players watching. Any team would love to have him. And unfortunately, he never got the All-Ireland, but he certainly got the respect all over Ireland. Has been one of the greatest players over the last 10 years.
And I suppose, John, if I can come to you now, John, in reverse order from number 5 to number 2, please.
Yeah, well, I slotted in here. It should be a tight call between 2 northern heavyweights here. I suppose number 5, Kieran McGeeney. Joe's talked about him there, and like he was a key player in Joe's system. And again, at the time, I mean, it was such a simple plan, but he played in front of the D, and Tony McEntee kind of came back and played at centre back. And Joe can tell us more about that, but that's what it looked like to us anyway. But like the belief-wise calmness, keeping he was the, if you like, the glue that kept that defensive formation for Armagh for so long. I mean, they won 1 All-Ireland, but they were extremely unlucky not to win another one. And like that was ahead of its time at the time. And McGeeney was there, and Canavan then would be number 4, is it? And again, like Canavan was in the veteran of his career, I suppose, when he won the All-Ireland in 2003, because he had played back in the 95 final, was it, against Dublin? But again, he was a leader. He was ruthless, and you could imagine the amount of respect that he was held in that dressing room. He was impossible to mark, and he allowed. What that did in that forward line is that he was double marked on lots of occasions, and therefore that freed up a lot of space for the likes of Stephen O'Neill and all these other fellas that got crucial scores. But he certainly was, and you know, the 2003 All Ireland, the fact that he was injured going into it, played part of it, was taken off and put on again at the end, I think was you know, some like huge influence on Tyrone's football history. That'd be down to number 3. I'd have Pádraig Joyce, and again maybe you know, because I know him so well and playing him for so long, he was a leader. And if you think of the 2 All Irelands that Galway won in '98, he was involved in the great team move, the goal that really was a clincher when we got 1-4, I think, in about 10 minutes in the second half. He was at the end of, and his calmness remember, he was only a 20-year-old at that time. He was under 21 that year, and the way that, you know, you see so many players, if they get confronted with the goalkeeper, they blast the ball, but he just took that one solo and kicked it into an empty net. He showed the experience even at that age. And then in the 0-1 final, when he had the first time, we switched him to corner forward to basically get Garden Fay out of the full back line. And there was a lot of confusion. Pádraig, we did that, but Pádraig wasn't, you know, he had a quiet first half. Lots of people in respect were saying he should be taken off at half time, and he ended up scoring 9 points in the second half and won the man of the match and player of the year or whatever. So he was accurate, he was confident, he had great vision. I mean, he could see what was on and bring other players into the game. That's my number 3, and we're due to our number 2 as well. You're looking for, is it? Yeah, Seamus Moynihan. A brilliant defender. Again, I think I talked about McGeaney as the glue that held the Armagh defence together. Moynihan did that for years in Kerry. When, you know, was an outstanding centre back, could play midfield as well. But then when Kerry had a problem at full back, he went back there. And in fact, he was the you know, he had himself and Pádraig Joyce had great battles over the years. But he was a man marker. He also was brilliant going forward and could score at the other end. He was a team player. He was a leader. He was a rock of sense, really. I'd have him at number 2.
And I suppose if I can come on to you now, Stephen, for number 5 to number 2 in reverse order.
Yeah, so number 5, I have Pádraig Joyce. Yeah, just real joy to watch and really balanced player as well. So number 4, I have Sean Kavanagh, key figure for Tyrone through the 2000s. And then on to the number 3, I have Brian Fenton at number 3. Yeah, I think he still has that record where he hasn't been beaten in a championship game. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And number 2, I have Stephen Cluxton.
And I suppose if I can come to you, Joe, first in terms of Peter the Great, Peter Canavan, a guy that we've had on our show a few times as well, a guy who transferred successfully into management as well. But Peter's brain in terms of a Gaelic footballer, he was a guy that you felt that was always 3-4 paces ahead of the play. He sort of knew where the ball was going to be, where he wanted the ball to be, where his teammates were going to be, and his chemistry with the likes of Mulligan and O'Neill, it was absolutely formidable. And you probably came up against it on so many occasions, Joe, and you almost felt like if you could take away the hack off the legs of Peter, that maybe the Owen and Stephen mightn't be influential, but when he got going, everyone in that Tyrone attack got going.
Yeah, he was the main man. But you talk about take away one leg. Unfortunately, I remember him coming back on in an All Ireland final in 2003 with one leg, and he still caused us problems. That's the effect, and that's what he brought to the game. You know, 2 men wasn't enough to mark Peter at his best, but he had ace in his veins. I go back to 2005, a free kick thrown. Peter said, "I'll put this over." and free kicks aren't easy on the best days. But when it's crucial, the difference of winning and losing the match, the last kick of the game, the only man you'd be happy to do it in a throne jersey would have been Peter Canavan. And he always stood up for such a small man with a small physique. He was as tough as nails. He took a lot of abuse. Give a fair wee bit of abuse out for such a small man. But he was the king of forwards over these last few years. Great player.
And I suppose in terms of Peter, we look at today's modern game, and I suppose people will go see an awful lot of similarities in terms of Northern football, in terms of Conor McManus for Monaghan, the role Conor plays in terms of that Monaghan attack. Peter is almost that sort of same influential spearhead in terms of Peter's ability to kick points from difficult angles. You mentioned that ice in the sort of veins, but that sort of cleverness, that sort of brain, the movement inside, the speed of thought, there are an awful lot of similarities between the two of them.
Yeah, two class there. Conor would be more known for long range points from out around the sideline. All he has to do is get an inch and he'll pop it over from 40, 50 yards. No problem anytime. But I think what epitomised Peter was probably the goal he scored in the All-Ireland final against Kerry. I think it was 2005. Owen Mulligan broke the ball. And Peter came in from about 30, 40 yards, let him know, his teammate know that he was coming, got the ball and slid the ball into the corner, rolled it in, and everybody could see it happening, but nobody could. The precision and the coolness for somebody to finish that, very few people can do that. And Peter was probably, he wasn't called Peter the Great for nothing. He was probably one of the greatest players at doing that.
And you mentioned Lee Keegan, and he probably is, in the last decade, he probably one of the greatest footballers not to win an All-Ireland football title, not to have that medal in his back pocket. But on the biggest days of them all, Lee Keegan always delivered in terms of All-Ireland semi-finals, All-Ireland football finals. And no matter the matchup he was paired against, whether it was Diarmuid Connolly or Paul Flynn, or in example, if he ever came across a Kieran Kilkenny, Lee was always put on the guy who was in form, the guy who was in momentum, the guy who was carrying the sort of Rolls Royce in terms of that Dublin attack. Same way when Mayo came up against Kerry, whoever was the most prominent Kerry player on the day, Lee was going over. And in terms of his ability to stifle a player, in terms of his reading of the game, again, a guy not blessed in huge physical stature, but again, in terms of his reading of the game and his ability just to be out in front of the forward, to know where the forward was going at all times. And as I suppose as a forward, it's a nightmare to know that every time you turn your back an inch, this guy is going to be, he's basically your shadow for the entire 60 minutes.
Yeah, probably started off early in his career as a back and half back, but then he matured and become one of the leaders and took the responsibility to make sure that a certain player on the opposition team, whoever it might be, wouldn't play. And it takes a remarkable player to be able to do that job week in, week out. The opposition work on how they can draw you out and make you look, silly and take you out of the game. But he was always able to read the situations, as you said, and then the impact he would have by going up and getting the score, like the goal he got in the All-Ireland final that got Mayo back into it. Just an unbelievable player, a pleasure to watch, great engine, and unfortunately he had the wee injury last year or the year before that it hampered him a bit. But, it annoys me when people come talk about this Mayo team, they're losers. What they have brought and what they've given us, and I'm in neutral, as public people watching them this last 10 years, it's unbelievable. As far as I'm concerned, they're winners without the silverware. The performances they put in, and Lee in particular, I thought they were magnificent this last 10 years, and deserve all the credit and all the rewards they can. I know they haven't got that medal, but have they made an impact on the GAA over this last 10 years? A massive impact. Where would we have been as supporters and neutrals if Mayo hadn't to be there? Nobody else would have.
I suppose, lastly, the last word on Lee Keegan coming to you, Joe. We all know about Diarmuid Connolly's brilliance and his flamboyance of skill and his ability to tear defences apart. But the one nemesis, the one arch player he could never really get the better of was Lee Keegan. No matter what opposition, no matter what team Diarmuid came up, He had the ability of turning it on like a Rolls Royce. But Lee Keegan was always his match, his maker in terms of being able to stifle Diarmuid's ability. And it takes some doing to stop a player of Diarmuid Connolly and Rolls Royce, and Lee Keegan was able to do that.
Yeah, like Diarmuid Connolly, without a doubt, has been one of the star players and most gifted players, skillful players that anybody has ever seen. In All Ireland club final a few years ago, he just gave an exhibition, for the full 70 minutes. Players come in and out of games, but Diarmuid Connolly would last the whole game until he met Lee Keegan. And Lee Keegan was one of those players. All great players have one player in your life that cause you problems, or you just can't shake them off. And I'm sure Joe knew plenty of those boys too, and Stephen as well. A certain man that if you was marking, you couldn't get away. Lee Keegan could do that with anybody, and that's what made him one of the greatest players over this last 10 years.
And I suppose if I come on to you now, John, you mentioned Seamus Moynihan there from Kerry, a sort of rock at sort of full-back. And I suppose many people who look at Kerry in relation to this last decade, and they'll say if they had Seamus Moynihan in their team, they would have probably beaten Dublin once or twice. And they probably might have won maybe an All-Ireland title in their pocket. They just didn't have that sort of that steel in the back line, and that's what Seamus Moynihan brought to this Kerry team. Real steel, real hard grit, a real sort of dogged sort of defender, but a guy that could play football as well with the best of them.
Absolutely, and that's what I said. I mean, he could play midfield, centre back, and converted himself into a fullback then, but he was a superb player, and he was the glue that stuck that Kerry defence together. And remember, Seamus Moynihan was a lot of his earlier career was during a very fallow period for Kerry, really, to be honest. So, I mean, he wasn't maybe, he would have been the one player, as you say, that if he was in the middle of these, when they were at their height against Dublin. I mean, I remember last year, in advance of last year's championship, talking to Tomás O'Shea, and he said, I said, you're going to push them hard this year, the Dubs, and he said, we need 2 or 3 defenders. Well, if they had Seamus Moynihan in the thick of it in 2019, perhaps Dublin mightn't have had the 5 in a row. Who knows? But Seamus Moynihan has been one of the greats. There's no doubt about it.
And I suppose in terms of that, why do you think Kerry haven't been able to produce another defender like that? The forwards keep rolling in year out. David Clifford, Seanie O'Shea, and I know, speaking to some of the Clare forwards there, when they play Kerry, they feel if they get the ball into full forward, like David Turber, he feels if he gets the ball in there, he's well able to score against the Kerry backs. And back in the day at Kerry, when Seamus Moynihan was inside there, you never really felt that the opportunities were there to score against Kerry. But these days, opposition feel that if they can get the ball into their forwards 13 yards out, 20 yards out, that their forwards will do the business against Kerry. Why isn't Kerry haven't been able to produce players of that calibre?
Yeah, it's amazing when you look at it. Like some counties, like Mayo, for instance, would feel that the difficulty they've had over the years is not producing top-class forwards in enough quantity. And you have Kerry, as you say, who seem to be breeding top-class forwards, but they're defending now. They've had some tremendous defenders, the Tom O'Sullivans, and there's a number of them over the years. That Tomás O'Shea, Mark O'Shea, really top-notch. But just at the moment, they are probably, it's the one area that you'd look at in their team and say it could be bolstered up, and that's where a young Seamus Moynihan coming through would be a godsend to Kerry at the minute.
And I suppose I just look, because we've mentioned Ciaran McGeeney and we've mentioned Peter Canavan already, I have to bring you on to speak about Pádraig, I'm afraid, because Pádraig, I know Pádraig was so influential for you, and he was your talisman, he was your marquee man in relation to that team you had with Sean O'Dwyer, with the Meehans, with Kevin Walsh, with Michael Donlan, John Donlan. But Pádraig was the guy when you needed the guy to win that free, to create that scoring chance. to put that free over. He was Mr. Reliable, I'd say, for you, John, was he?
Well, he was really, and as I said earlier, I mean, his confidence was something that was never shaken. And he, you know, as I said, in that All Ireland in 2001 All Ireland, he had a quiet first half, and he just took it on in the second half and basically won the Player of the Year and the Man of the Match in the second half display alone. And he was that kind of player. I mean, he had the vision, he had brilliant peripheral vision, where he could pick out a player in a better position or whatever, and he was superb that way, and he was just an accurate finisher. You could always kind of mark down 5 or 6 points, and if he got the goal chance, he'd take that as well. So and then obviously he went on. All of that group, he probably was the one that played the longest. Played under Joe there when Joe was in Galway and so on. So he has a tremendous legacy, and at the moment he's be taken to the management game like a duck to water as well, you know. So he is top class player, absolute top class player. I know that there was an awful lot of brilliant players on that team, and you could go through them, but you know, Pádraig was a special player right from the time when he won the All Ireland with Jarlath's and back in '94 among that group as well. So he showed leadership all his life. He showed the forwards, a marquee forward, and that's what. If you look at all the teams that have won All Irelands, they've always had marquee forwards, one or two of them, and Pádraig was one of those ones for Galway. There's no doubt about that.
And we've seen, John, the revival in terms of Galway's footballing fortunes in the last 3 or 4 years. They've climbed the ladder at a phenomenal rate. Probably people would say probably in the top 3 in the country at the moment. But when you look at Galway trying to make the next step, the penny will drop on the shoulders probably of Shane Walsh, and Shane Walsh is probably very reminiscent in terms of his impact on the current Galway team to the likes of Pádraig Joyce was in terms of your team. So if Galway are going to be formidable, I suppose Shane will have to show the leadership qualities that Pádraig showed.
Yeah, and I think Pádraig made a good choice by making him captain as well. I think if you were comparing Shane Walsh with players in the team that I had, probably Shane is more happier, if you like, in the half forward line area, maybe more a Michael Donlan type player than a Pádraig Joyce, but certainly is, you know, the ease with which he kicks points with left and right is certainly reminiscent of Pádraig of Pádraig Joyce. So yeah, I think that Galway have had a difficult number of years. I mean, Kevin Walsh came in to do a particular job where he had to kind of do a bit of minding the back door, as it were, which was badly needed at the time because they took a bit hammerings in defence. He did that exceptionally well, and I think Pádraig now has gone back a little bit more to the traditional Galway, you know, shootout at Old Care Corral stuff. And if they can combine, if they can get that bit of tightness in defence along with the fearless play up front and the teamwork up front and the ability to kick the ball quickly and move the ball quickly, I think Galway will be, you know, thereabouts. But you have obviously Dublin, Kerry, Galway, Tyrone, maybe whoever else, Donegal are there as well. So that's all for us to get back to when hopefully we'll see some ball at the end of the year.
And I suppose if I can come on to you, Stephen, I suppose Meath men don't like really talking about Dublin in the last decade or so in terms of Meath's rich history in terms of Leinster championships. And I suppose the thorn in the side so many times for Meath down through the years has been Stephen Cluxton, the orchestrator for Dublin, right from his goal kicks, he's reading of the game, his ball control, and I suppose as a Meath man, Stephen Cluxton has left a legacy on not only All Ireland football but on Leinster football as well. That won't be matched, I'd say, not in the next 2, maybe 3 decades.
Yeah, no, well, look, sure, he's revolutionised I suppose the position itself, it's well touted, you know, how key he is, and I suppose how other teams are now trying to replicate the way he plays the game, and trying to, you know, be a quarterback as such, and kind of, yeah, just really get Dublin off on the front foot, and retain possession from their kickouts. And yeah, like, I suppose when you play against Dublin, you kind of appreciate how good he is, how accurate he is. You know, whether it's a little 20-meter punt out short, or if he has to, you know, sometimes Dublin have half forwards making a burst, and he's able to pinpoint them from 50 meters as well. Like, so he's just so accurate, and it's very hard for teams to negate against his kick out and his strategies, I suppose.
And I suppose in terms of yourself and your playing career, Meath were really, I suppose, 2009, 2010 was probably good years for Meath football, but you still probably came up against formidable Dublin midfielders, and at that time, like Michael Darragh Macaulay would have been young around then. I suppose Kieran Whelan, I think he might have moved on at that stage, but lo and behold, a guy comes along after the likes of Michael Darragh Macaulay, after Kieran Whelan, and he takes midfield to a whole new level in terms of Dublin football.
Yeah, no, he's some talent. He's just as a midfielder, he's got it all. He's good in the air. He can attack. He's comfortable with the ball. He's a good passer. He's good work rate. He gets up and down the field. And yeah, he's very quick as well. Yeah, there's not really too many negatives for Brian Fenton. Yeah, the players you mentioned, I suppose, prior to him, you know, he's probably a combination of maybe a Kieran Whelan and a Michael Darragh Macaulay, in the sense that, you know, Kieran Whelan was quite good in the air and quite good on the ball, and Michael Darragh Macaulay had an engine and get up and down the field. So he's just, as a midfielder, he's got absolutely everything. There's nothing that's missing from his game, I don't think, anyway. So that's why I have him so high up on the list.
Yeah, and I suppose, Stephen, we all talk about the brilliant Dublin footballers, and they're littered the team, all across the team, all-star sort of footballers. And the question normally comes often is, well, how about if Brian Fenton was playing for Kildare, if he was playing for yourselves, Meath, if he was playing for Laois, Westmeath, would he still catch the eye? Would he still be as noticeable in terms of his impact on a Gaelic football field? And I suppose a player of that calibre, he'd shine no matter what county colours he's wearing.
Yeah, no, I think so. I suppose, look, and that's the thing about individual awards. Like, he's just very lucky to be part of a really good, balanced team, and you know, he can really stand out and really play to his strengths. You know, I suppose as a midfielder, you know, he's got the best goalkeeper in the country, probably the best goalkeeper ever to play the game, on his side as well. So, you know, he can make runs left and right or wherever he wants, and it's going to be probably more in Brian Fenton's favour than anyone else's favour. So, yeah, I suppose, look, I still think Brian Fenton, yeah, no matter what county he'd be playing for, he's still going to stand out.
And I suppose it now comes to the time in relation to crowning each of yours number one. So I'm going to start with you, Joe. I'm just going to count back your 10 to number 2, and you might inform us then of your number 1. So for a 10, Joe Kernan, you've Pádraig Joyce. At number 9, you've Tomás O'Shea. At number 8, you've Brian Fenton. At number 7, you've Sean Kavanagh. At number 6, Alan Brogan. At number 5, Bernard Brogan. At number 4, Peter Canavan. At number 3, Kieran McGeeney. At number 2, Lee Keegan. And who, for you, Joe Kernan, takes the number 1 spot?
Well, just before we go, all the 24 players that we named, their counties probably wouldn't have won All Irelands because they all had big parts to play. So it hasn't been easy, but my number 1 is Stephen Cluxton. 6 All Irelands, or 6 All Stars, And they used to say years ago, there used to be complaints why Stephen Cluxton never got an All-Star, 7 All-Irelands, 5 National Leagues, 15 Leinster titles. You know, every team that wins needs a special player, somebody that can hold their team together. The length of his career, you know, how has he kept his hunger going, or how is he still so hungry? You know, he's changed the game, as Stephen has said there, with his kickouts. He's brought the game to a new level, but he now has become the best coach that ever played the game, and has the biggest influence on the greatest team that ever played, winning 5 All-Irelands in a row. And that's why Stephen Cluxton would be my number one.
And I suppose, Joe, you mentioned he's revolutionised goalkeeping, but he's also created a pattern for new goalkeepers to follow. He's led Niall Morgan. We see Niall Morgan from Tyrone. We see Rory Beggan from Monaghan. And Stephen Cluxton's influence in terms of goalkeeping has maybe developed Niall Morgan's game to a new level. It's developed Rory Beggan's game to a level where these guys are almost as critical to their counties as what Stephen Cluxton is to Dublin.
You can bring that with you, Madeline.
And playing the game at the highest level that they're playing at. You know, a midfielder can make a mistake, a forward can make a mistake, a fullback or a goalkeeper makes a mistake. It's remembered for all time. Stephen Cluxton then puts more pressure on himself in the fact that he goes out and wants to take free kicks off the field. He scored the winner against Kerry a few years ago. You know, so it's amazing the appetite he has for bringing pressure on himself, coping with it, and then succeeding in what he wants to do by getting the scores, getting the perfect kickouts, covering the full back line, and then hitting that 50-yard ball out of his hands or a 20-yard pass out to the wing and sets up attacks. He has been the most instrumental player in present history.
I suppose if I can come on to you now, John O'Mahony, and I'll count back your order. Number 10, you've a joint between Lee Keegan and Andy Moore. At number 9, you've Colin Cooper. At number 8, Brian Fenton. At number 7, Sean Kavanagh. At number 6, Bernard Brogan. At number 5, Kieran McGeaney. At number 4, Peter Canavan. At number 3, Pádraig Joyce. At number 2, Seamus Moynihan. And who takes the number 1 spot for you?
Well, you can. Myself and Joe Kernan didn't always agree, but we certainly agree on this one. Stephen Cluxton would be my pick as number 1. He, as has been said already, he changed the face of Gaelic football. First of all, I think, you know, coming out the field, taking the frees, winning the 2011 All Ireland, and then obviously the kickouts were unbelievable, where he puts it into the mouth of people. I mean, I watched recently the Mayo Dublin final of 2013, and the exhibition that Stephen Cluxton gave that day. I mean, Aidan O'Shea and Seamie O'Shea could hardly get within 20 yards of where the ball was landing, and because of the reactions and the way that he was able to just come up and put it into Dublin players' mouth. It was unbelievable. And you might say, well, this was a natural talent he always had. But I actually happened to be watching an under-21 All Ireland in 2002 where Galway played Dublin, and Tommy Lyons was manager of Dublin, and I was manager of Galway at the time. And actually, Cluxton had serious problems with his kickouts in that game, and it was one of the reasons that we dominated the middle of the field. At the time, Joe Bergen and Kieran Comer. So, in other words, this was the way that, and I think, you know, when he described there in some interview, and he rarely gives interviews, but when he described about coming to the pitch an hour and a half ahead of training, the way that he has developed this over the years, you know, some people would say not only is he the best goalkeeper, but he's nearly the best midfielder, because he influenced midfield so much. With the way that he distributed the ball. Now, there will be individual years. For instance, David Clark got an All-Star 2 years in a row, I think, during the period that Mayo and Dublin were head-to-head. And, you know, like he has shown sometimes in an odd league game and stuff like that, that he's human. But I think overall, he has been one player that has really stood out on top of the pile for me.
I suppose, John, in terms of his longevity, Stephen, he's come up against many whippings in terms of the opposition's forward line. And one prominent whipping would have been the Kieran Donaghy, the star on top of the square, and his ability. But Stephen, for a man never big in sort of stature, he was never sort of phased, or even while Dublin might have problems themselves in the full back line, Stephen was never really caught out under the high ball himself.
Yeah, he wasn't, and like he never panicked. That was a big thing. If you think of, I think they played Kerry, was it in a semi-final, and I think Kerry got 2 goals near the end of the first half, and like Stephen Cluxton came out in the second half, so as nothing had happened, didn't phase him from the amount of kick-outs he got away, saves. Even in last year's, was it the final, the drawn final or the replay final, he made some saves that were absolutely top drawer. So, you know, he has it all really, and you know, he's such an ambassador for the J in the sense that, and a role model for not just young goalkeepers but young players of how not to, you know, in any sense lose the run of himself. I think he's a tremendous example to any young player who wants to make it, and they can make it if they put in the time and the, you know, and maximise their talent. And Stephen Cluxton has done that in buckets, really.
And I suppose I'll come on to you now, Stephen. I'll count back in terms of your 10 to number 2, and then you can provide us with your number 1. So that's Stephen Bray. At number 10, you had Carl Lacey. At number 9, you had Jack McCaffrey. At number 8, Kieran McGeeney. At number 7, Tomas O'Shea. At number 6, Peter Canavan. At number 5, Pádraig Joyce. At number 4, Sean Kavanagh. At number 3, Brian Fenton. At number 2, Stephen Cluxton. And for you, Stephen Bray, who takes the number 1 spot?
Yeah, I suppose being an inside forward, I've kind of went with Colin Cooper. Yeah, I suppose, look, just through the dominant years that Kerry had, he'd probably been their talisman, and yeah, as I said, as an inside forward, just a joy to watch, and you know, the skills and the balance he had as a player, like, you know, what he lacked for in strength and physicality, he certainly was able to overcome that with his skill and his intelligence and his balance. So yeah, probably should have had a general consensus with me picking Stephen Cluxton at number 2. I probably should have had him at number 1 maybe, but yeah, I went with Colin Cooper anyway for number 1.
And I suppose, Stephen, in terms of Cullum's ability and his consistency, game in, game out, of averaging maybe 3-4 points from play, averaging goals at crucial stages, and you always felt, no matter the occasion, to try and keep, you always knew going out of the game Colin Cooper was going to score. Maybe the target for opposition was to try and keep him under 5 points from play, and try and almost at all times try and stop Colin Cooper hitting the net, because when Colin Cooper grabs a goal for a Kerry, it sort of lifts Kerry to maybe a 16th man on the field.
Yeah, yeah, I think, look, yeah, I think he's just such an intelligent player on the ball. I think in latter years, when he came out to number 11, he got to even show, you know, his vision, his quality of passing, to be able to do what he can do on the ball. I think is, you know, personally as a forward, it's not easy what he does, and the way he's able to find space and create opportunities, and just so skillful and balanced. Like it's not something that's very easily trained. It's you know, he's very unique, and yeah, I certainly think he should be up there with some of the best players over the last 20 years.
Yeah, and I suppose, lads, before I let you go now, just maybe in relation to 2 minutes on some of the players that didn't make the list or selections. If I can come to you, Joe, I'll just throw out 2 names at you there. 2 names that probably stand out decades apart. The star Kieran Donaghy from Kerry, and the flying halfback sensation Jack McCaffrey from Dublin. And I suppose in terms of both 2 gifted footballers, both Kieran devastating in around full forward, and Jack McCaffrey, the ultimate speed merchant of Gaelic football.
Yeah, well, you feel sorry leaving out any player of quality when both these players were players of quality. Like Jack brought something to Dublin that they didn't have. The burst of speed, he lifts the crowd when he gets the ball. You know there's something going to happen every time he gets it. You know, but the difference in him I seen in Lee Keegan could probably do that bit more. But then the abundance of talent that Dublin have to fill all the holes. Jack was one of these players that just brought them to another level. Pace, power, scoring ability, lifts the crowd, plays the game with a smile on his face. You know, nothing seems to be a problem to Jack. So, you know, disappointing that we didn't put him in there, but the amount of good players that Dublin had, he was just one of the ones I felt I could leave out. And Kieran Donaghy come from nowhere. I think it was that TV show that Kieran was found on, and come into Kerry at that time, and Kerry were struggling. I think they lost the Munster Championship that year. They went in the back door, and on the way along the road in the back door, Donaghy became the star, which he rightly held on to that name for years. But he brought something new to Kerry that they didn't have from the bomber, and it worked in the 70s and the 80s for the great Kerry team of the past, and it certainly worked with the combination that he had on the inside line with Gooch, Tommy Walsh, etc., and all the other different forwards that were used in there. So it lifted Kerry out of the doldrums having Kieran Donaghy there, made them winners once again, and he had an important part to play for that 8, 9, 10 years that he was there.
I suppose, John, if I can come on to you now, 2 names for you, just maybe 2 minutes. And I suppose the first one I'll throw out to you is Mark O'Shea from Kerry. And then the second would be my all-time favourite footballer. Growing up as an inside corner forward at 13 or 14, I tried to model my game around this guy. Stephen O'Neill, for me, was just the most gifted attacker I've ever seen in terms of kicking points, in terms of solos, in terms of trick dummies, in terms of just scoring outrageous, ridiculous scores. And maybe you can talk to me a bit about Mark O'Shea and Stephen O'Neill.
Yeah, well, Mark O'Shea, I mean, was an outstanding defender. There's no doubt about that. And he, you know, when he was, I think in 2014, he didn't make the starting team for the Mayo replay down in Limerick. And he either started then or came on during the game, but had an outstanding game, unbelievable game that day, to turn that game around. And, you know, he has been a servant for so long, really. So, yes, I mean, you see, the thing about these names that you put us, the dilemma that you gave us here is that you could argue 100% for every one of them to be number one, really, because they're winners in every sense. But that's not the way it's we had to come down to a decision. But Mark O'Shea, definitely, Tomas O'Shea, and Stephen O'Neill was superb. Now, I suppose, why not Stephen O'Neill? Well, Stephen O'Neill, I think, didn't he opt out in 2005, was it, or 2008? So, you know, maybe he had enough of it at that stage or whatever, for a while. So I suppose longevity is the one thing that you go right through, and that would be maybe with Jack McCaffrey as well. I mean, he went abroad, obviously, for his career as a doctor, and then he had an injury, a fair few injuries as well. So, you know, but yes, Stephen O'Neill was a superb finisher, and I mean that's why Tyrone have 3 All-Irelands, really, to be honest. I think, you know, talk about people unlucky, like you mentioned there, because of the extra names that you gave us, you know, the Declan Meehans, the Stephen McDonald's, like, and Joe would know this better than me, but we knew it because when we were playing against him, he was some player, like left, right, strength, ball winner, finisher, agile, absolutely devastating, you know. So Carol Lacey, you know, wasn't in my 10 selection there, but I mean, Carol Lacey had 2 All-Stars won before Jim McGuinness took over, like, and then he, in that run in 2012, he was crucial. I think he laid on the first goal for Michael Murphy, came up that right wing for Donegal and laid the ball across, bang, in whatever, was it 2 minutes or something, the goal went in. So look, there's a lot of hard luck stories there, but I think any manager would love to have any of those players or a half dozen of those players in the team, and you'd have a great chance of winning, pushing for another 5 in a row.
And I suppose, Stephen, just the final 2 names I'll just throw out to you. I suppose another sort of Leinster man, and I suppose probably in terms of football, probably the least glamorous name, but in terms of his impact, in terms of Leinster football, he was revered in terms of renowned, in terms of the Declan Brown of Tipperary, the Martin Daly of Clare. The one name that came to everybody's lips was Matty Ford of Wexford. And then the second guy, just for discussion, James O'Donoghue for Kerry, burst onto the scene lightning fast. So effective in terms of his ability to kick scores and kick goals. But a guy that was probably dogged by so many injuries just when you felt his career was about to take off.
Yeah, Matty Ford. Yeah, I'm delighted you mentioned him. 2008, Wexford beat us in Leinster semi-final, was it? We were 8 or 9 points up, and I suppose Matty Ford had an unbelievable second half performance. And yeah, I suppose, look, definitely the fact that they didn't win an All-Ireland, didn't win a Leinster title, and yet Matty Ford is a player of the year. Speaks volumes for the man himself. He obviously was doing it week in, week out for Wexford, and year in, year out. So yeah, look, he was a top player. Sorry, you kind of broke up, Jim, a little bit on the second.
James O'Donoghue from Kerry, a guy that was probably so prominent when he burst onto the scene at first, so deadly, so effective, just tore defence apart in terms of his menace, but the injuries have sort of curtailed his career in the latter few years.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly when he broke onto the scene, he was I suppose nearly taken over from the Gooch and kind of a real weapon for Kerry. But yeah, has definitely been plagued with injuries and has yet to get back to that kind of level. He seems to have a problem with his shoulder, so hopefully he can get back to those highs. He's definitely a great player to watch, and he's still quite young, so I'm sure there's plenty of good years ahead of him.
I would just like to come to the end now, and that concludes tonight's special edition of the RCB Radio Sport Show. From me, Jim Conlan, I would like to thank our guest, Armagh legend Joe Kernan, the All-Ireland winning Galway manager John Mulmahony, and the Meath footballer Stephen Bray. Tonight's show can be viewed on our YouTube channel, RCB Sport, or tune in of a Monday evening live at 92.5 or 94.8 FM throughout West Clare, or online at www.rcb.ie. As this show, the crowning of the Texaco, the GPA Footballer of the Year, we've seen 2 guys get the award there tonight, Stephen Cluxon from Dublin and Colm Cooper from Kerry. And all that's left to say is from me, Jim Conlan, good night and take care, and we'll see you all again. So Joe, John and Stephen, take care and thanks again.
You're welcome.
Cheers. Thank you. All right. See you. Bye-bye.
See you, Stephen. See you, Joe.